What's up? My name's Dan. This is my shed, and today I'm making this universal bike rack. For this build, we're going to use some really simple stuff that you might already have lying around the shop. So we need a board, one that's more than 12 inches by 12 inches. You're going to need a dowel. Mine happens to be 1.25 inches. Wood glue to make sure things stick together. Forsner bit that matches the diameter of your dowel. And then you're going to need some screws and, of course, a drill. Or in my case, I'm going to also use my drill press because I have a drill press, and that will just make hogging out the holes a little bit easier. You could use a lot of different tools to achieve the same result. So for the first step, what we need to do is cut this board to 12 inches by 12 inches. That's really easy, of course, on the table saw. You could do this with a circular saw as well. It's just going to be a little bit questionable if you have a smaller board, so be really safe if you're making that cut. Of course, you could use a hand saw as well. It's just going to take you time, but you're going to get a nice workout, get a little sweat going. And after whatever method you chose to cut the board, you're going to need to make a grid so that your holes are evenly spaced. Now what I did is with the 12.5-inch piece of plywood, it's really easy. You can just half 12, which is 6, and then half 6, which is 3 and 9 on the other side, and then half of those make even spaces, so it's every 1.5 inches effectively. Do that on the X and Y axis, and you'll have perfect placement for your circles, and then you can use your straight edge to rip a nice profile. Before you go over to the drill press and hog those out, or again, use that drill with your Forstner bit or your hole saw. And when you finish your drilling, it will look something like this Swiss cheese piece of board, which then you need to cut along that line to make kind of a nice triangle support for this bracket. Now, I decided not to use the table saw, even though that would be perfectly fine with a jig, but the bandsaw makes really quick work of that kind of angle, and I figured I might as well not mess with straight things and angled things and potentially, you know, having problems. Then I ripped these down to 3 1/4. If you have wider tires on your bike, you might want to do more than 3 1/4. The main rack is done, and that's going to accept these pegs into these holes, and that's what makes it universal. Is no matter what size your tire is, however thick it is, you can just move the peg and shift the bike. Now this isn't quite fitting. It's just a little too tight, so I'm gonna make sure to sand this down and fit that in there so it's nice and firm, but not too firm. So I wanna make sure that it fits in there really well so that it'll hold up that bike. So it's really important to make these side panels on the bracket because that'll give it some strength and rigidity. And so I'm just pre-drilling these holes for the screws and then giving it some glue just to add some strength to that. And this will also be how I affix it to the wall, which will be important for stability and making sure it's safe hanging there. So there you go. You can see how that will go together. The peg, once I have that sanded down, which you'll see in a second, it will fit right into those holes, and then you can adjust that and your bike will hang from that. I will drill a couple holes in so that you can screw this right into a stud or into the wall, whatever is going to secure it well. And that's all there is to it. A really simple build. It's going to be great for some shed storage or garage storage. If you sanded this and made it look really pretty, or made it out of hardwood, you could probably put this in a loft or something like that where you want to show your bike off, you want to make sure that's seen. You can take the dowel and thin it down to size so that when you check in 3 holes, each one fits. You want to make, again, sure it's snug enough that it's not going to fall out with the weight of the bike, but also that it's going to fit in there nice and tight. I mark a line so I can go cut it on the bandsaw again, and then just sand it down to make it look all so pretty. Then I have to face the fact that I have this bike on this really ugly hook, and I can pull that out, remove the hooks, toss them to the ground like the lowly things they are, and then install the new bracket. I'll, of course, have to make another bracket because my better half has a bike, and that bike deserves a similar fate. But here it is. It works really well. Now, the one thing I would change next time is I would make that top bracket a little bit shorter so that the bike tire could go above it. But otherwise, it works well. This is going to be able to hold any bike, and so we can change them out in the future. If you have questions or comments, feel free to leave those, and appreciate you subscribing.